David, the anointed future king of Israel, had to flee from Saul. Now, Saul was determined to kill him, and David needed a place of refuge. He first sought refuge with Samuel, and when that didn't work, he sought the help of Jonathan. Jonathan was able to help David flee, but he couldn't provide the refuge. David then went on to the priests of Nob to seek God's guidance. Now, from there, he tried to seek refuge in Gath among the Philistines. In these chapters, David will seek refuge in a cave among the Moabites and in the wilderness of Judah. Now, while hiding in the wilderness of Judah, David will come to the rescue of the city of Keilah. This event is between the accounts of Saul killing the priests of Nob and seeking to kill David. Now, what does this juxtaposition reveal about David and Saul? What will David learn about the true place of refuge while he hides from Saul? I'm Dan Cathcart, and this is the Promise of Rest. After David escaped from Gath, he sought refuge in caves near the town of Adullam, now within his own tribal land of Judah. 1 Samuel 22, 1 and 2. David therefore departed from and escaped to the cave of Adullam. And when his brothers and all his father's house heard it, they went down there to him. And everyone who was in distress, everyone who was in debt, and everyone who was discontented gathered to him. So he became captain over them, and there were about 400 men with him. Now there are 3 points to consider in these 2 verses. Now, what is the significance of Adullam? Who went with David or joined him there? And what David accomplished with those who joined him? Adullam first appears in the Bible in the account of Judah departing from his brothers and living among the Canaanites in Genesis 38:1. Judah was seeking refuge from his family after he persuaded his brothers to sell Joseph into slavery. Judah's actions resulted in his father Jacob's deep grief. Now, Judah, probably suffering from guilt, went down to Adullam, which Joshua tells us is in the lowlands of the tribal lands of Judah. According to the Brown Driver Briggs lexicon, Adullam means a retreat or refuge, just like Judah sought refuge at Adullam from his own conscience. David sought refuge from the persecution by Saul. Now, in each case, that place would only provide temporary refuge. Those who joined David were all those who in some way or another were also fleeing from Saul or other opposition or oppression. Now first, David's family joined him, probably because they feared what Saul would do to them in his anger against David. David's family included all his brothers, including those who mocked him at the battle where David defeated Goliath. His parents and his father's entire house also joined David. Now this would most likely have included his cousins Joab, Abishai, and Asahel, who would play an important part of his administration when he became king of Israel. Now among his family, men who were in distress, in debt, and discontented joined him. Now, these men don't seem to be the type of men that David would want to have with him. Now, however, when we examine the Hebrew behind each of these terms, we get a more favorable impression of these men. The Hebrew word for distress is matzog, number 4689 in Strong's Concordance, and it literally means or refers to a narrow place. Its use implies a state of anguish, distress, or oppression. Our English idiom for these people would be that they were between a rock and a hard place, with no discernible choice that could lead to a good outcome. Now, this word is only used 6 times in the Bible. Most often, it is in the context of being trapped in a city under siege and being starved to the point of cannibalism. David would later write that when he experienced anguish, matzog, he would find refuge in God's Torah. Look at Psalms 119, 143, and 144. Trouble and anguish have overtaken me, yet your commandments are my delight. The word debt is also a word that is used infrequently in the Bible, only 4 times. It is the Hebrew word nashah, number 5378, meaning to lend on interest, to dun for debt, to give of usury. Now, in Nehemiah 5:7, it is used in the context of being pressed upon for undue favors. So the context here is not the debt, but the interest being charged on the debt. Now, this goes against the Torah. The children of Israel were not to charge their fellow Israelites interest on a loan. The last group of people were those who were discontented. The Hebrew word for discontented is the phrase mar nefesh, which means bitter of soul. The word mar, number 4751, meaning bitter, and nefesh, number 5315, meaning breathing creature or soul. In Ruth 1:20, Naomi asked to be called Mara because of the misfortunes she endured. Now, these men who joined David had been beaten by life. They had no hope, and their burden was too heavy to carry. They were certainly not skilled warriors. Yeshua invited those who were downtrodden to join him. Look at Matthew 11:28 through 30. Come to me, all you who labor and are heavy laden, and I will give you rest. Take my yoke upon you and learn from me, for I am gentle and lowly in heart, and you will find rest for your souls. For my yoke is easy, and my burden is light. David took these men and became their captain, their leader, their refuge. However, Adullam was just a temporary place of refuge. David wrote Psalm 142 while he was in a cave at Adullam. He states that Adullam, as a place of refuge, had failed him. Psalm 142, 3 and 4. When my spirit was overwhelmed within me, then you knew my path. In the way which I walk, they have secretly set a snare for me. Look on my right hand and see, for there is no one who acknowledges me. Refuge has failed me. No one cares for my soul. David and his men departed from Adullam and sought refuge at a watchtower of Moab. David's purpose may have been to seek refuge among his great-grandmother Ruth's people. Again, this was not a place where David could remain. While he was in Moab, the prophet Gad came to him and instructed him to return to the land of Judah. 1 Samuel 22, verse 5. Now the prophet Gad said to David, "Do not stay in the stronghold. Depart and go to the land of Judah." So David departed and went into the forest of Herath. Keilah and Dalich comment on the purpose of God's instructions through Gad. According to the counsels of God, David was not to seek for refuge outside the land, not only that he might not be estranged from his fatherland and the people of Israel, which would have been opposed to his calling to be king of Israel, but also that he might learn to trust entirely in the Lord as his only refuge and fortress. Now, when Saul received information about David's location, he gathered his closest supporters, those from his own tribe of Benjamin, and incited their wrath against David. 1 Samuel 22, 7 and 8. Then Saul said to his servants who stood about him, "Hear now, you Benjamites, will the son of Jesse give every one of you fields and vineyards, and make you all captains of thousands and captains of hundreds? All of you have conspired against me, and there is no one who reveals to me that my son has made covenant with the son of Jesse. And there is not one of you who is sorry for me or reveals to me that my son has stirred up my servant against me, to lie in wait as it is this day." Saul's words made a division between the tribe of Benjamin and the tribe of Judah, specifically the family of Jesse. It seems that David's family was wise to hide from Saul. He offered rewards to his supporters, followed by a threat if they didn't reveal what they knew about David. Doeg, the Edomite, stepped up and revealed what he saw at Nob when David approached the high priest Ahimelech for food, weapons, and guidance. However, Doeg twisted the situation to imply that Ahimelech conspired with David. Saul summoned Ahimelech and his entire house, as well as all the priests that were in Nob, and accused them of conspiring with David. Now, despite Ahimelech's answer that his actions were innocent and he didn't know that David was not on a mission for Saul, Saul ordered that he, his family, and all the priests of Nob be executed. Look at 1 Samuel 22, 17 through 18. Then the king said to the guards who stood about him, "Turn and kill the priests of the Lord, because their hand also is with David, and because they knew when he fled and did not tell it to me." But the servants of the king would not lift their hands to strike the priests of the Lord. And the king said to Doeg, "You turn and kill the priest." So Doeg the Edomite turned and struck the priests, and killed on that day 85 men who wore a linen ephod. Doeg killed 85 priests who wore the linen ephod. The linen ephod is the symbol of their office and refers to their purity before the Lord. Saul's actions were more than the murder of people. He murdered God's representatives on earth. Saul went on to destroy the entire city of Nob, including the women, the children, the livestock, and possessions. Saul treated Nob as if it were Kerem, a city set aside for destruction, just like that of Jericho. In this case, Saul is also again usurping God's authority and putting himself in the place of God. One of the priests, the son of Ahimelech, Ahitub, escaped the massacre and fled to David. When David heard that what Saul had done, he acknowledged his guilt in bringing Saul's wrath on the city. David wrote Psalm 52 about the judgment that Doeg faced from God. Psalm 52, 4 through 5. You love all devouring words, you deceitful tongue. God shall likewise destroy you forever. He shall take you away and pluck you out of your dwelling place, and uproot you from the land of the living. The massacre of the priests and the city of Nob, as commanded by Saul, demonstrates the depth to which Saul had fallen. His obsessive hatred of David spilled out into his treatment of the people under his rule and the priests of the Lord God of his own kingdom Israel. After this event, the Bible turns to a contrasting event which highlights David's commitment to his people, even at the cost of his own safety and those of the men with him. Where Saul's people were reluctant to tell him anything they knew about David, the people were not so reluctant to go to David. When the Philistines attacked the city of Keilah in the tribal lands of Judah, they didn't go to Saul to tell him about the attack. They went to David. 1 Samuel 23, verse 1. Then they told David, saying, "Look, the Philistines are fighting against Keilah, and they are robbing the threshing floors." David had a choice to make. He and his men could have remained safely hidden from Saul's notice in the wilderness of Judah, or they could defend the city of Keilah, saving the people. However, in the process of saving Keilah, they would reveal their location to Saul. Further, David's band of 400 men were not really warriors. They were the lost, the downtrodden, and the weak. These men really didn't want to fight the Philistines. So David decided to ask the Lord what he should do. 1 Samuel 23, 2 through 4. Therefore David inquired of the Lord, saying, "Shall I go and attack these Philistines?" And the Lord said to David, "Go and attack the Philistines and save Keilah." But David's men said to him, "Look, we are afraid here in Judah. How much more, then, if we go to Keilah against the armies of the Philistines?" And then David inquired of the Lord once again, and the Lord answered him and said, "Arise, go down to Keilah, for I will deliver the Philistines into your hands." So David took the band of men with no experience in warfare and attacked the Philistines. The Lord did as he had stated. The Lord, through David's 400 men, defeated the Philistine force and saved the city. Now, in contrast to Saul, who murdered the innocent priests of the Lord, David saved the city of Keilah. Of course, Saul heard what David and his small band of men had accomplished. Instead of being upset that the Philistines had attacked Keilah, he saw the situation as an opportunity to capture and kill David. Saul summoned the army to besiege the city of Keilah, where Saul thought he had David trapped. David had just saved the city, and now Saul wants to destroy the city just like the Philistines tried to. Now, however, David knew that Saul would hear about the battle to save Keilah. He once again sought guidance from the Lord. Now, it just so happened that when the priest Ahitub fled from Nob, he took the ephod with him. Now, this seems to be a particular ephod, not the simple linen ephod that all the priests wore, but the ephod of the high priest, which held the Urim and Thummim. Now, warned by God, David and his men left Keilah and sought refuge again in the wilderness. As he left Keilah, another 200 men joined him. 1 Samuel 23, verse 13. So David and his men, about 600, arose and departed from Keilah and went wherever they could go. Then it was told Saul that David had escaped from Keilah, so he halted the expedition. Now David was no longer able to simply hide from Saul. Saul knew David was in Judah and was actively trying to find him. Now during this time, Jonathan went to David to encourage him. Look at 1 Samuel 23, 16 through 17. Then Jonathan, Saul's son, arose and went to David in the woods and strengthened his hand in God. And he said to him, "Do not fear, for the hand of Saul my father shall not find you. You shall be king over Israel, and I shall be next to you. Even my father Saul knows that." David wrote Psalm 11 while he was hiding from Saul in the wilderness. The Art Scroll commentary on 1 Samuel explains. It was during these wanderings that David composed Psalm 11, in which he declares that although he had been forced to flee like a bird, he has faith that God will protect the righteous and rain punishment upon the wicked. In Psalm 11, David declares that God tests the righteous and will judge the wicked. Psalm 11, verses 4 through 6. The Lord in his holy temple. The Lord's throne is in heaven. His eyes behold, his eyelids test the sons of men. The Lord tests the righteous, but the wicked and the one who loves violence his soul hates. Upon the wicked he will rain coals. Fire and brimstone and burning wind shall be the portion of their cup. The clan of the Ziphites bring word to Saul that they know where David is hiding. Saul immediately sets out after David. But David had already moved on. Saul pursued David to a particular large rocky hill. Look at 1 Samuel 23, verse 25. When Saul and his men went to seek him, they told David. Therefore he went down to the rock and stayed in the wilderness of Maon. And when Saul heard that, he pursued David in the wilderness of Maon. Saul caught up to David at the rocky hill. He went one way around the mountain, and David went another way. Just when Saul had almost had David surrounded, a message came to Saul that the Philistines had invaded Israel. 1 Samuel 23, verse 27. But a messenger came to Saul, saying, "Hasten and come, for the Philistines have invaded the land." The Art Scroll commentary on 1 Samuel comments on this fortuitous message. In the plain sense of the verse, a human messenger came to tell Saul of the new development. Rashi cites the Midrash, which renders that God sent an angel to divert Saul and thereby save David. Saul had to choose whether to continue his pursuit of David or redirect his efforts toward defeating the Philistines. Saul chose to go after the Philistines. God used the Philistines to rescue David out of Saul's hands. Look at 1 Samuel 23, 28 and 29. And Saul returned from pursuing David and went against the Philistines. Therefore they called that place the Rock of the Division. And David went up from there and stayed in the strongholds of En-gedi. The rocky hill where God rescued David was named the Rock of Division in the modern King James translation that we just read. But other translations render it the Rock of Escape. The Hebrew word translated as divisions or escape is Makal Oketh, number 4256, meaning a section, a company, division, or portion. Ellicott's commentary for English readers offers a reason for preferring the translation escape instead of division. Other scholars, with greater reason, prefer the derivation from a Hebrew word signifying to be smooth, the cliff of smoothness, that is, of slipping away or escaping. Now, whether it should be called the Rock of Division or the Rock of Escape is debated among scholars. However, in the Hebraic mindset, both understandings can reveal insight into the situation. Saul and David were divided at the rock, like they were divided as one went around one direction and the other in the other direction. The idea of division is to make a choice. Saul had to choose whether to pursue his calling of delivering Israel from the Philistines or pursuing his vengeance on David. Now this highlights the choice that Saul and David made throughout this account. Also, the messenger arrived just in time for David to smoothly slip out of Saul's grasp through the divine intervention. Now this was a time of testing for David. He learned that when God called him to make the hard choices, God was with him to give him the victory. He learned, as evidenced by his Psalms from this time, that his true refuge was not a place or the people who were with him. His true refuge was in God. When capture seemed inevitable, God provided an escape. I'm Dan Cathcart for Moed Ministries International. Shalom and be blessed.